I act this spell upon you from my whole heart, wishing you to never rest, nor eat, nor sleep the rest or part of your life. I hope your flesh will waste away, and I hope you will never spend another penny I ought to have. 19th century curse, found in East Street, Hereford, England. There's something unsettling about a sealed room, especially when hidden inside a home. In 1976, a phone call to the National Museum of Ireland reported the discovery of a quote-unquote cave during construction work outside Wicklow Town. Dr. Joseph Raftery, keeper of Irish Antiquities, sent young archaeologist Eamonn Kelly to investigate on what would turn out to be his first ever fieldwork assignment. The report was misleading. It wasn't a cave or even a souterrain, but a sealed up brick oven connected to a fireplace in Coolbeg House. The structure had been blocked off in the early 20th century. Inside that bricked up oven was a strange and silent cache. The chamber had been sealed with corrugated iron and stones, and when builders breached it, they found a curious collection of items. These were removed at the time of discovery, and the archaeologist brought what was found to the museum, though it's unclear if this was everything. Iron objects, a candle snuffer, a cramp, a bar, a bolt, a broken hoop, a pewter spoon fragment. At the time, all were assumed to be 19th or early 20th century. But years later, a re-examination of the spoon's photograph by British expert Simon Moore revealed something unexpected. The spoon likely dated from around 1600. There were also glass bottles, 3 green, 1 light blue, as well as clay pipe bowls and a scrap of leather with machine stitching on one edge, likely from a shoe. Bones from cattle, pigs, and a bird the size of a goose, wood fragments, charcoal, an hourglass-shaped wooden object. At the time, no one could explain it, but decades later, at a 2012 conference on the archaeology of folk magic in Baltimore, it became clear. This oven deposit from Wicklow may be one of Ireland's few known examples of a spiritual midden. In late medieval England, during a time of mounting fear of witchcraft, protective deposits known as spiritual middens began to appear. It was believed that witches could slip into homes through chimneys, doors, or windows, liminal spaces, but especially chimneys. People responded by hiding assemblages of everyday or personal objects in cavities near fireplaces or behind hearths. These weren't just discarded items, they were layered with intention. A spiritual midden might include domestic debris, bones, broken pottery, worn shoes, but it could also be infused with magical logic. Sharp metal objects to pierce or trap, shoes to attract spirits and confuse them into staying, glass to confound or repel. The practice followed settlers to America and Australia. The contents of these middens often overlap with another form of protective folk magic: the witch bottle. Witch bottles were made as magical countermeasures, most often to ward off illness or misfortune believed to be caused by a curse. Some were apotropaic, built into houses as protective amulets. Others were reactive, created in moments of fear or suffering. In the latter case, a person might bottle their own urine, sometimes with hair, nail clippings, bent pins, thorns, or pieces of iron. The sealed vessel, usually glass or ceramic, was buried or heated. Heating intensified its effect. The witch who caused the suffering might fall ill, appear in distress, or even die. Some believed it forced the witch to reveal themselves. Others saw it as pure defence. One case, found at the Old Bailey in London, records a man testifying that his wife had been subject to the ill machinations of a local witch. The judge, understanding the severity of the man's dilemma, gives him clear advice. Visit an apothecary and create a witch bottle to turn the curse back on the witch who cast it. Another key ingredient in witch bottles, if you could get it, was sulphur. If you think about it, the attraction of using sulphur makes sense. It's spewed out of volcanic fumaroles from the underworld. It would have been the ideal thing to kill a witch if you wanted to. Witch bottle practice is also referenced in 17th century texts. In 1671, Joseph Raftery wrote, "Another way is to stop the urine of the patient, close up in a bottle, and put into it 3 nails, pins, or needles, with a little white salt, keeping the urine always warm. If you let it remain long in the bottle, it will endanger the witch's life." Witch bottles functioned within a wider framework of sympathetic magic. Harming a symbolic or magically linked object would, in theory at least, harm the person it was connected to. It reflects a worldview of early modern Europe, where medicine and magic, as we well know, often blurred. These practices of protecting a building and its occupants were at their height during the hysteria of the witch hunts and witch trials of the 16th and 17th centuries. Whether the witch bottle worked or not is unclear, but it is said that once the evildoer was dead, the bottle would break. These are not uncommon finds in buildings of this period, and several are known from London, including a near-complete freaking Bartman jug from London's Guildhall. And because these items were hidden, they're rarely found, only surfacing during demolition, where a builder, a tradesman, doesn't even realise what he's uncovering. One such witch bottle was unearthed in Pennsylvania at Governor Prince State Park. A small, dark olive glass bottle buried upside down. Inside, 6 round-headed pins and a cork stopper. Beneath, a bone fragment and pottery. The bottle, dated to around 1740, was likely part of English-style folk magic brought to colonial America. It may have once held the urine boiled with the pins. The bewitchment was being turned back on its source. In Greenwich, England, a builder excavating a basement found a complete Bellarmine jug, still sealed and still rattling. These Bellarmine or Bartman jugs, often bearing a bearded face, were common 17th century vessels used for their durability. This one was x-rayed and analysed and was found to have held bent pins, nails, hair, nail clippings and a heart-shaped cloth. The liquid tested positive for urine. The nail clippings came from hands that hadn't known labour, perhaps someone of status, which makes sense because the bottle lay in the shadow of a royal palace. Not all attempts to create these witch bottles ended well with us finding them hundreds of years later. In 1804, in Bradford, England, a cunning man named John Hepworth was commissioned to make a witch bottle from iron. He heated it over the fire, believing it would be more potent, but it exploded and killed his client. This is the only known case of a witch bottle fatality. Iron was rare for this purpose because glass and ceramic were safer, though still volatile. And not every protection was buried or hidden. In 1892, a lead curse tablet was found in a cupboard in Wilton Place, Dimmock. Etched into it, backwards, was the name Sarah Ellis. The message read, "Make this person to banish away from this place and country, amen. To my desire, amen." It included lunar sigils, a cross, and magical symbols, Christian, astrological, and demonic in nature. On the reverse was a full lunar table. Lead was sometimes chosen for its weight and permanence and its classical association with the underworld. Such tablets are rare in post-medieval Britain, but their use echoes ancient Greco-Roman practices. Legend says Sarah Ellis was a real woman and that the curse worked. She is said to have died by suicide, buried at a crossroads with a stake through her heart. When workers cracked open the Coolbeg House oven, they couldn't possibly have known what they were stepping into. A collection of discarded items, or the remains of a quiet ritual long forgotten. Today, we can recognise it for what it was, a deliberate act of folk magic, born of fear and necessity. The oven, once warm with fire, became a sealed vault of silent protection. From sulphur and salt to urine and pins, from hidden jugs to charmed iron, these remnants speak not only of fear, but of ingenuity, of everyday people trying to seize a kind of power in the face of an invisible harm. These remnants of spiritual middens and counterspells tell us something vital about the people who made them. They were not foolish, they were not quaint, they were navigating invisible threats the only way they knew how, with fragments of the body, bits of the home, the shimmer of a spoon, the salt and urine, and the burn of belief. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Pine Cones, bite-sized folklore from Rowan and Pine. If you did, please be sure to leave us a comment if you're on Spotify or review on your platform of choice. It helps us very much. And until next time, try not to give anybody a reason to create a bottle with you in mind.
Thanks for listening, and fuck yeah, folklore.
Fuck yeah, folklore.